I know I have felt like my subconscious beliefs that were like not serving me were like these monsters hiding in like a dark cave. Hello. Hello.
Should we
Uh,
start out by saying who we are?
I think
Because this
so.
is going to be the first episode that we release with video.
Oh
Did
my
you?
God.
Yeah.
How
I
do I
mean, we've
look?
been recording video for a while, but this is the
Yeah,
first time.
the first official
So,
one. Yeah.
yeah. So, I'm Sarah Turner,
And
and this is my
oh,
voice. It's nice and
yes.
raspy. That's how you know it's me. Sorry, go
And
ahead.
I'm Emily, and this is my
She sounds like
voice.
an angel.
And apparently I sound like an angel. But so you can,
And
and then so you can see our faces if you're watching
I
video or
know.
hear
I'm
our
so excited to
voices.
start doing video. We've been recording video for a while, but this will be when we start actually releasing it. So
Yeah.
it's good.
I like personally like really enjoy seeing people's,
Hmm.
facial expressions and stuff like that. And,
Totally.
you can connect
Totally.
with them on another layer for sure.
Yeah. And I'm excited about what we're talking about today because we're going to be talking about choosing beliefs, which is
Mm,
something we've touched on a lot, but we haven't like explicitly called out. And I think that's really
that,
important.
yeah.
Um, and it kind of came about because we were recording a Patreon episode
Mm-hmm.
um, about a movie that I had recently watched called How It Ends, and then I got you to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And through that conversation, we were talking about beliefs that we've chosen
Mm-hmm.
over the years. And through that conversation, I was like, oh, we need to make this like a topic that we really dig into. So,
Yeah. I think through that
yeah.
conversation, I didn't hearing your reflections and stuff, I think I didn't really take a step back and consider how like maybe interesting that the concept of like consciously choosing your own beliefs is, because I think it's something that I had just integrated out of necessity. And it was just like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't know, doesn't everybody consciously like decide what they're going to believe or not believe? And I think it's not that simple or that clear for many people, and so that was interesting to kind of see it from like more of your perspective around like actually this is like a thing I haven't really talked with anybody about before, and
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? Like, when have
yeah.
you had a conversation with somebody where you're like, well, are you choosing beliefs that, really help you live a better life? Has anyone ever
No.
asked you that? You know what I mean?
No.
Nobody's
Yeah.
asking that.
Mm-mm.
But it's like what we're talking about. It's one
Yeah.
of our favorite subjects. It's like the point of
Yeah.
this podcast.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
because that's, I mean, throughout my 20s and early 30s, it's been a journey of choosing beliefs, really, when
Yeah.
you look at it.
What serves you,
It's
what
been a
doesn't
journey
serve
of,
you.
yeah, of looking at the things that I took on, the beliefs I took on that were not my own, um, and the ones that I default to, because that's something, that we all do,
Mm-hmm.
where, you pass a judgment, you have a conditioned response or reaction to something like a partner says, and it all comes back to your core beliefs. And some of them you don't choose. And the thing is
Right.
if you don't, it's like anything else, right? When you have the language and the verbiage and the vocabulary to have certain conversations, it brings awareness and empowers you really to live life differently, I think, or more to your choosing. And so I think that's why it's so important to actually call out the fact that we're all choosing our beliefs,
Mm.
some consciously, some subconsciously, because that's what creates our reality is a system of beliefs. Um, and that's why we choose the people we like to spend time with, usually, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're people who have beliefs that are in alignment with ours, and that's why we think other people are idiots.
Sure.
Because they've
Yeah.
chosen a system of beliefs that we completely disagree with. Like it's
Mm.
like the basis of who we are and who we prefer to spend time with and why everybody's fighting. Um,
It's everything. It is literally how you construct your reality, is the
yeah.
systems of belief that you adhere to. Whether, and I think the point of like, some of them might be conscious, but I think the
Mm-hmm.
majority are subconscious. And
Oh, 100%.
that is like, in that statement alone is what pushes back against like the whole think positive movement, because at the end of the day, you can think positive all you want and you can have as many like conscious thoughts as you want, but if deep down in like your subconscious belief systems you don't believe you're worthy, or you don't believe you're deserving of love, or et cetera, it doesn't matter how much you like say it out loud, really. Like and we've talked a lot about like manifestation and like what does that look like, and what are the systems of actually uncovering those subconscious beliefs and triggering a genuine
Mm-hmm.
emotional response so you can start rewiring that. And it's not to say that
Mm-hmm.
don't like, affirmations are powerful, those things are really powerful, but there's like layers deeper that need to be addressed in order for those things to really start shifting. And I love that whole way of thinking. It does sometimes feel a little like, I know I have felt like my subconscious beliefs that were like not serving me were like these monsters hiding in like a dark cave, and they were these
Mm-hmm.
like things that were influencing my life that I had to discover. And there was this like there was some fear around it too. Like what are these things that are causing so much like negativity and like just like low self-worth and all this stuff. But every time I like shone my metaphysical light on my monsters in the cave, it's just always been like a little part of me, like a little version
Yeah.
of me that believed something my parents said, believed something like somebody from example
Mm-hmm.
was showing me. And and every time I come back to such a deep sense of compassion for myself, and like having that compassion of like, these beliefs, even though they're damaging to me, this belief that I'm not deserving of love, for example, um, it was there for a reason, based on what I
Mm-hmm.
experienced. It wasn't like I consciously chose that. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is today you can consciously choose to look at that and decide what you're going to
Mm-hmm.
continue feeding, and then
Mm-hmm.
what you want to let go. That was like a little bit of a roundabout way or to go about it. But I feel like this whole conversation was partly triggered. I had a recent Instagram post.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Should I
Yeah,
go
go
there?
into that. Yes,
Um,
definitely. Because
that,
I remember when you first told me about this belief, and I was like, that's so interesting. But the thing that was most interesting to me was how you're like, I'm just choosing this belief.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, let's give it some context. So definitely share
Yes.
what that post is, or that
So,
belief is really.
yeah, what the belief is. And it was a belief
Mhm.
about my children. I remember when I was first pregnant with Evie, my oldest, who's 10, 10 and a half. And I remember I was pregnant with her. I was 23 when I got pregnant. I was really young. And at that time, I was going through my deconstruction of my, like the faith of my upbringing. So I was taking a
Mhm.
deep look at the evangelical Christian fundamental upbringing that I had. And I was actively like deciding like, what do I still believe and what do I not believe, right? So it like,
Right.
I think that
And
this
this
whole
is why I think
concept,
all my closest friends
yeah,
are all like cult people, because you have to
there's
go through this.
there's something that happens, and I think that's why it felt so normal to me, and I was like, doesn't everybody do this? Because it was just I had to completely disassemble my reality and reassemble it
Mhm.
in order to
Mhm.
function. And that's what happens when you have like a huge paradigm shift, whether you're leaving a faith system, or it could even be the end of a relationship. It could even, I think we all experience it to some extent when we differentiate from our parents. We all have
Yes.
a bit of a paradigm shift.
Mhm.
um And then there just can be varying degrees. I think it even can be when you're like, if you're coming out as queer, like if you're just having a
Yes.
shift in your
Mhm.
reality, you have to like take a conscious look of like, what am I subscribing to? What's serving me and what's not? And so for me, I was in the midst of that in regards to my faith. And then when I was pregnant with Evie, I remember having it kind of propelled that whole process forward, because I had a little bit of a crisis around like, I feel so unsure about so many things. And like, what am I going to teach this child? Like, I don't even know. I don't even know what I think at this point. And I remember in the early years of my two girls, Lila's 8. So I had them close together, like 21 months apart. And, um, I remember having this kind of like default belief, just it was one I hadn't excavated yet, of that God gave them to me, entrusted me with my children, right? And it was like my responsibility to do right by God by raising these kids. And even though I didn't wasn't really subscribing to the God narrative in that way anymore, that subconscious belief was still there, because I hadn't looked at it and
Yeah.
addressed it yet. And so for me, that was incredibly stressful, because I felt like, okay, first of all, like, what if I fail? Like, what if I fuck up? What if I fuck them
Mhm.
up? Am I failing God? Like, have I let God down? Like, have I let
Mhm.
my children down? My poor children, they're stuck with me, this like infallible, like imperfect person. And like,
Mhm.
maybe they would have been better with another person. Like maybe they would
Mhm.
have been better with somebody who had their shit together more than I did. And it just like spiraled all these trains of thought that I just felt not enough, because like the whole situation didn't feel consensual to me. Like God just
Right.
decided this was, and it wasn't like I wasn't in a trust God mode in my life at this point either. So I
Yeah.
feel like you could bypass all of that if you're just like, I trust God, but I didn't at that point. So I started like looking at that belief, and I
Uh-huh.
decided, I was just like, that doesn't really like work for me anymore, because it's making me feel less than, it's making me feel like a failure. And it's making me feel like it actually was driving a wedge between, like an energetic wedge between me and my girls, where I didn't like, I felt guilty. I didn't feel connected to them. And like I'm your mom and I'm what you need. I felt like guilty, like I am less than and I'm failing you. And
Mm.
that's like, and I feel like moms, like any moms that are listening, like probably resonate with the like whole mom guilt thing. This is like, it's pervasive, it's heavy, it's intense, and we all have our different like versions of it and our different ways to deal with it. And this is how I dealt with mine. And I decided that like this whole idea of God giving me these children and it not being a consensual transaction, but being like a test or like a something else, just didn't work for me. And so I decided that I was like, okay, what's an alternative? And my alternative was that my children chose me, that somewhere like beyond
Yeah.
what I can comprehend in this reality, their souls were like, this soul, this
This is
person,
mom.
this is mom. This is the person that I need to be my mother for this lifetime. And it's not because I'm perfect. It's because I'm human, and it's because I'm experiencing this reality how I'm experiencing it, and they wanted to do it with me. And
Mhm.
that way of thinking just like, it made me feel connected to them, because I trusted them. I trusted their souls, and I trusted my soul, that we were like
Mhm.
doing this together. Like we decided to do this together. We are like in agreement that we are going to be mother and daughters, and we're going to do life together. We can trust each other. I'm not like crushed under this like unbearable weight of guilt that I'm like failing all the time. But instead I'm like, you chose me even with like the understanding and knowing that I'm human and flawed. And like
Mhm.
it just, that was like, and it really changed my even my view of them, because like it turned from like they're these naive little children that like are just stuck with me, to
Yes.
that they're like
Yes.
deeply intelligent like souls that that are not, they're not ignorant, and I have so much to
Mm-hmm.
learn from them, and I actually can trust them in a like in a
Yeah.
soul way,
Yeah.
in a deep way. Anyway, so like that was kind of like a much longer version than what I wrote on my Instagram. But yeah, it's this idea that I recognized a belief wasn't serving me. I explored alternatives, and I chose something that made me feel, my indicators that this is I'm going to replace is I feel
Mm-hmm.
big, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
powerful, I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
small and insignificant and like a failure. I feel big and powerful, and it is a closeness and a like and a deep feeling of love and acceptance, and like those are my like markers of like this is
This
in
is the right
alignment with.
one.
Yeah.
Yes. Ugh, I
Yes.
love that. I love that because it's so interesting to me because I don't know, like, I don't think I have the same. I don't know. I don't know that I'll like need that belief. You know what I mean? Who knows? We'll
Hmm.
see. But it is interesting to me because I remember you first telling me that like years ago and just being like, wow, you just chose your belief around this thing to, and it allowed you to show up as a better mom. And also,
Mm.
one of the things that I really love about that belief in particular is that there's an element of trust in your girls, and I think that that's actually really important because the more I interact with like kids, not as a kid, you know, I feel like I see that they're like just with interacting with my nephew, for example, and the things that would come out of his mouth, I was like, wow, they're so like honest and true. Like
Right.
everything you're saying is so like true. And oftentimes we're like, shh, don't say that. Cause it's like, I don't know,
We've
socially
all
like
learned to
impolite
repress
or
that. Yeah.
yeah, or makes us uncomfortable, right? Like, or we're uncomfortable because it's a big emotion or I don't know. And I remember interacting with him when he was pretty young and I was like, wow, actually, I think we're just like kids are just so wise right out the gate and
Mm,
don't have the conditioning that colors their observations of the world.
100%.
Um, and I don't know. I also remember like being a kid and feeling so not trusted or like having adults think that I was like trying to manipulate them when I was like, what are you even talking about? You know what I mean? Like I was just
Hmm.
like, no, I don't like it's like my brain hadn't even gotten to that kind of a like complex way of
Development
thinking yet.
stage. Yeah,
Yeah. Where I
totally.
was like I was it's just so much more like simple and pure their thought processes. I mean, from what I can tell. And so, I don't know. I really loved that belief when the first time you shared it with me because it also touches on that, which is something I really
Yeah.
like about how you interact with your girls.
Mm,
Because I think also when you, we've talked about this before, when you like trust children initially, right?
mm,
Um, like it feels good to be trusted. It feels
mm,
really good to
mm,
be trusted. And I think that you kind of like want to continue that feeling. And so you do
hmm.
things that like create more of that, really.
Yeah, you have like a
Um,
standard for yourself that you want to
yeah,
maintain.
totally. But
Mm,
anyway, so I really love the idea of choosing beliefs because we really do that's really what we're all doing. We don't frame it in that way. And the idea of
yeah.
like it being a conscious choice. And I think as I've gotten more comfortable with it, because over time, like, you know, when I was like feeling like shit and like the worst parts of my life and just like in the deepest pits of despair and like misery, and I was like trying to choose my beliefs through things like affirmations and morning routines and stuff like that. And I just remember like listening to myself saying like some version of myself that I wanted to like embody and just being like, give it a rest.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard. But the thing is I
Mm,
actually think that choosing your beliefs is something that you can practice because
mm,
now so much more easily. Also, I think I've like moved towards making my life more in alignment with my beliefs. And I think that like integration makes this easier as well. But
yes. Yes.
I do see myself now where I'm like, I'd like to like choose this belief and it comes more easily. It comes more
Mm,
easily than it ever has before. And so I don't know, something it can be as simple as like, I don't really want to be stressed out about this or anxious about this or obsessive about this thing. And it can be as simple as like just saying that thing and then letting it go, which I don't think that when I started my journey into like just being healthier mentally, um I don't think that was like as accessible for me. So I think it's
Mm,
also something that can be practiced, this idea of like choosing beliefs. Some I think come easier than others, but I do think that as you start really like making your choices and your life in alignment with your core beliefs, choosing beliefs gets easier. I don't know if that made any
yeah.
sense, but
No,
that's
I
just
think
been
it's
my
a really good
experience.
point to make because it's not like a light switch. Like
Mm-mm.
there is, I feel like there's the initial like aha moment of like, I see it. Like I see the thing. I
Mm-hmm.
see the belief that's like limiting me. But I do think it's like a practice to, because
Mm-hmm.
you recognize how those patterns play out in your life and you have to address them over and over. Like it wasn't like a light switch happened and all of a sudden I had no mom guilt. Like it was like,
Right.
it was like a practice in trusting my girls, a practice in trusting myself. So I think that's like a really good point to make, that it's a growth process and it's something you continue to loop back through and ask yourself, like, is this in alignment with
Mm-hmm.
the life I want to live, you know? And um
And it's also
yeah.
something that like is interesting because as I've done that, the other thing that happens is when you choose beliefs, oftentimes you have people in your life that are in your life possibly because of like the beliefs that you originally had. And as you start
Mm,
choosing new beliefs and showing up differently, because that's what happens, you show
mhm,
up like slightly differently. It could be subtle, it could be big, depending on the belief. But as you start showing up differently, like the people in your life are often confused and like it's like we want our brains are like pattern recognition machines. And so when someone in your life just starts because I remember even in having conversations with my siblings and like trying to communicate with them differently, in a much more like open, curious, compassionate way,
mm.
it felt weird. Like it was like it's like trying on like a new style. And
Yeah, it
I
feels
even like
awkward and
yeah, and I
mhm,
even my older sister would be like, what are you doing right now?"
mhm,
Like, what is this? And I'd be like, I'm practicing, and it's definitely a little awkward and feels a little funny and isn't how I used to like communicate.
mm,
um
mhm.
but the thing is to really just like keep doing it and to keep practicing and trying, and people will adjust accordingly.
Mhm.
um yeah, it's so
Yeah.
interesting, and it does get easier because also the other thing is once you become the kind of person who's like, this is the path you're taking, people will either like grow with you, in my experience, or it'll make them very uncomfortable, and they'll pull back a little bit naturally.
Mm,
Like you don't have to like push people away or anything like that, but um I don't know, the whole idea about adopting new beliefs and also like having permission to like change your mind, gosh, that was like
mhm.
such a big realization for me too. So because there were so many things that I became a part of like who I was, like a core trait of mine. um
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's just
That's
like it could be as
that
simple as like
point.
being the party girl. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yes,
one where it's
yes,
like I
yes,
was the
yes. This
big,
is such a good point.
wild,
Mhm.
rambunctious party girl who loved to go out and like drink and be like super charismatic. And then just kind of
Mhm.
pulling back from that and people and feeling like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, am I lame? Am I boring? Um and people around me like struggling to see like their perceptions of me weren't at this their perceptions of me were there was like a lag, right? And that's how it's going to be. There's like a lag behind like how you see yourself, how you're showing up, and how people are perceiving you because
Mhm.
they're not in there with you doing the work. Anyway, so I
I
feel like
think
we need
this
some
point that you
stories because I feel like
yeah.
it's all very like big and like I'm thinking about many different things. So I don't know if you something's
Well,
coming
I
up for
think
you.
that this
Sorry.
point that you're making about when we take beliefs um, about ourself and we turn them into our personality, like I'm the party girl or I'm the shy one or I'm the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like those defining beliefs that you have about yourself can sometimes be so incredibly limiting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's tricky because you're just like, that's how I am, that's how I've
Oh
always
yeah.
been. or like you have almost like a defense system in place if anything is like pushing up against that. But I actually was just recently talking to a friend about this who experienced something similar. Like he was the glue that held the whole social circle together, and that was his role
Mhm.
until he
Mhm.
couldn't fucking do it anymore. And he
Mhm.
like burnt the fuck out and had to like check out from all of that because it was just too he felt like he was playing this role that wasn't fully authentic to like the
Mhm.
waves and ebbs and flows of his like his state of being. And I think that that's like good. It's good to question, you know, and we like to say like what are the stories you're telling about, you know, whatever given thing. So what are the stories you
Mhm.
tell about yourself? What are the things that you define yourself by? I am XYZ. And are
Mhm.
those like, I think that there's a distinction to make between, are they beliefs that you're choosing, you know, are they like
Mhm.
roles you're playing, personality that has been kind of developed, or is it really like an authentic expression of you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think like that whole thing is like, because I've recently been pushing back on like the idea that I have social anxiety. I feel like that was like a belief that I kind of, and maybe COVID fucked that with me a little bit, fucked with everybody. But like even before then, I think
Totally.
I had this like belief that I was shy and awkward because I was like homeschooled and then I went to college and I was the most awkward human. And and so I had this, I think I had developed this belief that I just have social anxiety because I
Mhm.
like am whatever. And I've been pushing back against that, and I'm like really enjoying that because I don't think I actually do have a ton of social anxiety, and I don't think I am introverted, and I don't think I am shy. I actually think I have this big like extroverted part of me, and it's been really really fun to see that part of me come out. Like I've been
Yes.
really enjoying it. And it's been very different than a belief that I had previously had of myself, you
Yo,
know?
it's the same. The extroverted introverted one is a really simple one everyone can relate to. I like really think I have both. Like truly. And I
Mm.
think as I've gotten more comfortable, because I definitely come across as an extrovert,
Hmm.
but I have to recharge alone. Like I get drained in big, long, like social situations, but I also get energized by them. So I think that's like a really nice one to like to touch on. And I think it's the other thing that I have like so many thoughts colliding at once. You know, that happens
Bottleneck.
and you're like,
Yeah.
um, where do I want to start? Yeah, I think that when you're like choosing these beliefs, the other thing I really helped me is catching when I say like I am. Because we talk a lot about like thinking
Definitive.
of
Yeah.
ourselves and parts. And I can't tell you when I'm talking to students of my course, Right Your Way to Freedom, constantly, and they're like, and it's so much easier to see in other people than it is to see in ourselves,
Sure.
which I think is
Hmm.
actually like one of the first steps in like bringing awareness is just noticing what other people around you say. Because usually, if the people directly around you are like saying certain things, it's usually indicative of your own beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes that can be the easiest place to start is to see it in other people. It's not your job to point it out though. Had to learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
Because when I was like first doing this, I was like, I see it in everyone else.
Belief,
You,
belief,
you,
belief.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like nobody likes that. Don't do that.
No. Mm-mm.
Um, but yeah, seeing it on other people helps. But then also sometimes just saying simple things like I'm practicing not being a perfectionist, like just freaking
Mm.
like shed the label like perfectionist. I hear that one all the time. Yeah, but I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, yeah, but you're choosing that. Like you can
Mm.
just as equally say I'm practicing not being a perfectionist. I'm
Mm-hmm.
practicing not like procrastinating. I'm
Mm.
practicing like you can practice anything. Like for me, I don't really I so heavily identified with being like in the science world because I thought that that was like just more valuable, really. It was a
Mm-hmm.
choice that I a younger version of me would say things like that I'm not like creative, but I don't think that's true. I actually think we're all
Mm.
creative, and I think that we all
Mm-hmm.
just kind of make choices on whether or not that's the thing that we want to cultivate. Maybe because a parent saw it in you and valued it. Maybe a teacher was like, "Oh, you're creative," and you liked the way that felt when someone called you that. Maybe somebody looked at you and was like, "You're less creative than your sister." So then like in comparison, to like somebody else in your life, maybe you are less creative, but that doesn't make you not creative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe it's something that you haven't chosen to practice. Like we're just so fucking dynamic. Like I just have really come to believe that we're so dynamic. We can choose parts of ourselves to amplify, to work on, to curate, to express. And it's so much more fun when you see life that way. And
Mm,
when you start to see other people that way too, I mean, empathy grows. Because you know that we're just like, none of us are black and white, and we're all,
yeah.
I don't know, we're all just like telling ourselves stories. And so, yeah, I
I
don't know
think
where
pushing
that.
back on that whole idea that we are like fixed and that we're
Yes.
not like ever changing and ever evolving. Like I think about it a lot. Like when people say, when like there's the whole saying like people never change, which comes from, I think, a very bitter, like hurt place. But I'm kind of like, I feel like that's all people do actually. Like for the most part is like change, you
If
know?
they
I
want
mean,
to, some people choose to stay very similar in a place, and
yeah.
I think that could be important for some people actually, but I
Mm-hmm.
completely agree with you. I think most people change
Most people
dramatically.
like change a lot, grow, experience things, change.
Hmm.
And I like, I have, and I spoke about this a little bit on our Patreon episode, but I actually like have a visual representation. I have this like it's literally like like a Target shelf, like it's a big shelf of my like psyche, and on the shelf are all these items that are my beliefs. I don't know, like
Yes.
I don't know where this came from, but it's there. My brain is just like a Target shelf. Anyway, on the shelf, I remember thinking like almost like seeing, wow, I have all these like default like store brand handed down uh
Mm-hmm.
beliefs on the
Generic.
shelf.
Yep.
Generic, yeah, they I didn't pick there, I didn't like curate it wasn't this like artisanal, like, curated, very thoughtful like thing. No, it's just like this like really generic belief that's on there that was just handed down from my parents, who got it from their parents, who got it from their, and it just is there. And I'm kind of like, do I want that, or is there something that's going to like serve me better? And I literally have the visualization of taking stuff off the shelf and putting something
I
back on.
love it.
Sometimes I take
I
stuff
love
off
it.
the shelf and it's just an empty space for a while. It's just
And
kind of
that can
like,
be
I don't know.
scary. I think actually the
Yes.
empty space is what makes people scared to do some of this work, because it's like,
Mm,
oh shit, if I take the thing off the shelf, the belief off the shelf,
yes.
I feel an innate like primal instinct to want to fill it. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's just like it feels
Yes.
scary
Deep
to sit in
discomfort.
yeah,
Yeah.
to
With
sit in
empty
a space of
spaces.
unknown where you're like, I
Mm,
don't know. And I think that's
yeah.
why deconstructing major beliefs like culty situations, anything that's like core, like hardcore belief was like shoved down your throat and it was so not what you
Mm.
wanted. It's so scary to remove it and leave space for the unknown. I don't even
Especially
know
when
like quite
removing
why
it.
that is. Because we just need to
Oh,
have an explanation. What is that?
okay. Let's explore
Like,
that
why is it
thought.
so scary? For it's because we're scared of unknown. Unknown is like what our
Yes.
brains are like, that's dangerous because we need
Yes.
to like have everything cataloged and categorized to feel safe, to make sense of the
Mhm.
world, probably.
Yes.
Um, I think though that that's just again a primal instinct, and for most of us, we're not in survive like deep survival. Like I'm talking like
Right. Food and
where you don't know where
shelter.
your
Yeah.
food is coming from,
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
kind of survival. And so it's got to be like a conscious reminder, a conscious pushback on your brain's like your brain is just wired for fear. And so I feel
Mm.
like there has to be a conscious pushback on that, because the empty space creates fear because it is unknown, and that's dangerous. And
Right.
so I think we have to be like, it's okay to be in the unknown, and getting comfortable takes
It's
practice, some
it's
mental
like kind of,
resiliency.
yeah, it's
Sorry.
almost redefining. It's okay. It's almost like redefining the unknown as something that is inherently bad, because there
Yeah.
was a time in human history where the unknown of like, I don't know where my meal's coming from, was like whether or not you were going to live or die, right? It was life or death.
And for
But
some
today, the
people, that is
unknown,
like today. It's just like for us
yes.
right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but for me, like the unknown about like what do I believe about some like, like I don't know, something that is just up in my head and it's more of like a value or a personality trait
Mm-hmm.
or things like this.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't life or death. These aren't life or death situations, but it also makes sense that our brain thinks they are, and
Mm-hmm.
I do also think another part is that there, especially our parents' generation, I think there was heavy emphasis on needing to know the truth, like needing to know infallible truth about
Mm-hmm.
things we cannot possibly know the truth of,
That's
and
actually, I got to point out that that's a Christian belief because it's not,
okay.
it's something
Well, and that was
well, it's
my
just
entire
something that
fucking
like
world.
blows
Yeah.
that, well, it's like so much of our like societal generational beliefs are Christian beliefs. And I haven't
Yeah.
realized that until
They're rooted
then.
in that. Yeah.
Because he doesn't
Okay.
have that desire to explain like he's like comfortable, much more
Mm,
comfortable with the unknown and not
mm.
knowing things than I am. And anyway, sorry, just had to touch on that because
That
it's
is
like
no, it's
fascinating to
such a
me.
good point.
It's
Yeah,
so
because
fascinating.
for me, the unknown, like not because you had this is what the pastors would say. You have to, unless you know beyond the shadow of a doubt,
Shadow of a doubt.
which listen, a 10-year-old does not know what that means. But unless you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that your soul is going to heaven, you need to raise your hand right now and come down to the
This is a
altar and like accept Jesus Christ. I'm sorry if I'm triggering anyone right
no,
now
no. I'm
as
just
this.
laughing because this is a Kevin James Thornton like
Oh,
TikTok. Have
does
you
he do a
seen this
bit?
one? He does a bit
No,
on this. Have
he
you
does an
not seen
altar
this?
call bit.
He does an altar call one because he was like, I went up for altar call every Sunday because I never
Right.
knew without the
Oh, no, I have
shadow of
seen
a
this
doubt.
one. I've seen this one. I've
He was
seen
like,
it.
how does anybody know? And he's like,
Nobody knows that.
but then they were like, Kevin, you're always up here. And he was like, but you said
But the
without a
shadow
shadow
of
of
a
a
doubt.
doubt. He's like, so
It's
I was like
so
addicted to
true.
being saved because I like never knew. I
Listen,
love
I had my own version of that, Kevin. I hope Kevin
that.
starts listening to our podcast because we talked about him literally every episode.
I know, I know. I love him.
I love him too. But so, like, that bit, like, when you grow up with like that framework that you have to know something you can't really possibly know, and you
I
have to
can't
be so
know.
sure about some ambiguous, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. But
Yes.
nobody could tell me what that looks like. And so I understood it was literally sheer force of will and the ability to make yourself hysterical and cry and like look like you're really, really invested in whatever's happening. Like that is like, anyway, so like the obsession with having to know that you know that you know that you know the truth,
Hmm.
and the consequences are an eternity burning in a lake of fire. So it just like
I just like did not have a lake of fire. That's so specific.
lake of fire. I would sit through like reenactments of like people going to hell. Like and they would do these like
What?
grotesque like people screaming and
I'm so glad we talked about our different experiences just because like I don't know. I think I sometimes I hear this and I just want to be like that was not my experience. That was not my
yeah.
experience. Just
And
because
I'm
what
glad
you
that
went through was
experiences yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yes. It's like a lot of people's also a lot of people's experiences on both
Yes,
sides,
yes.
but it like for me talking about beliefs, everything gets rooted back to those
Yeah.
that because like that was what like literally formed in my formative years. It was hellfire and brimstone and beyond the shadow of a doubt and like all these things that were so confusing. And so for me to sit in a place of I don't know, I remember it was
God.
crippling. Like it took it was 2 years. I for
Oof.
2 years I remember it was Evie's first 2 years. That's all I did was I was
Mhm.
just like, I just told myself in my head, I don't know. I don't know. I
That's
don't
what, you know,
know.
one of my favorite things that you say to me that is so helpful when I'm freaking out is you don't have to make a decision right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I it is like it is like an innate reaction of the brain, I think, when you're having like a freak out and you're in like a triggered state and you're super fearful, you feel like you have to problem solve. And it's the worst
Yes.
time to be problem
So
solving.
much pressure to do that.
Well, you're
Yeah.
not also in a calm state tapped into your feelings and you're like and your higher self. You're like an
No.
actual like
It's
you're like an
like
actual
base
like
survival instincts, like an
panic.
animal. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and so not making decisions from that place, one, has been, like, very helpful because I used to.
Mhm.
That's, like, when I would make decisions, I'd be like, "Alright, I'm gonna make some life decisions
I'm
now.
gonna
Not even
move
think."
across the country, or I'm gonna
Yeah,
fucking
I'm gonna
like
book a
make
flight right now.
we're booking flights.
That's, like,
Yeah.
my 20s, most of my flights were booked in that state.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
to not wanna book a flight when I'm triggered is actually, like, big
Big,
growth right
big
there.
growth. Big growth. Big win.
Big win that I don't wanna run
Yeah.
away from my life. We've come a long way. We've come
Yeah.
a long way. Um,
Yes.
but what were we even saying? Oh,
You
when
were
you
just yeah.
say yeah, when you say you don't have to make a decision right now, I think that that's something that I've actually taken to other, like, parts of my life, and it can be applied to, like,
Mm.
this scenario as well. Like,
Yes. Uh-huh.
just because you're, like, saying identifying a belief that you don't agree with anymore or is actually harming you or even is just, like, not helpful, you can choose, and it's uncomfortable, but you can practice getting more and more comfortable with it. You
Mhm.
can choose to, like, not make a decision and to say I don't know.
Mm.
Um and yeah, it's just it's not something that a lot of us feel like the permission to do, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Um
I think I don't know is seen as weakness, maybe
mhm.
ignorance,
Mhm.
maybe I think it's seen really negatively when somebody says I don't know,
Yeah.
because we're coming from this whole thing of like you have to know beyond the shadow of a doubt, and
And
if you
that's
don't,
also
you're yeah.
yeah, and a core belief of mine, because I used to have a belief that I don't even know like what the original belief was, but it basically was a judgment that some of people's passions were like frivolous, was kind of, I guess, the
Mm-hmm.
core belief. Like some of the things that people were choosing to do with their life, I was just like,
We're less
what?
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Mm-hmm.
was just I just have such a core value of helping people that when
Mm-hmm.
people's like thing didn't appear to be helping people, and I like had a
Mm-hmm.
major blind spot there because a lot of like art forms and stuff, I would be like, wow, how self-indulgent. Like we've talked about this core belief of mine when
Mm-hmm.
I was like in my early 20s. And I've replaced with that belief, because I actually like really don't believe that to be true, and I don't really know where that belief came from, because it's not my like didn't come from my parents actually.
Mm-hmm.
um like not at all. But when I chose to kind of like push back on it, because it didn't feel good, it didn't feel like right even, it was just kind of a place of judgment that I would go.
Mm-hmm.
When I started to realize how fucking important it is for people to follow the thing that like they're meant to be doing, and that might change. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there's like one core reason you're here. Um, but when I started seeing like how the world is a better place when people do that, and they're better
Mm-hmm.
humans when they're doing that, and I saw like how it's not only like just valuable, but it's actually like quite possibly like the most important thing. When I
Yes,
have these
yes, yes.
conversations where I feel like, because I notice it especially when like politics come up. Like I have one friend in particular, he like I don't think we can have a conversation where we don't get into politics, but he's so much more like educated on like world history than I am, that I
Mhm.
immediately feel, I notice when I'm talking to him sometimes that I feel dumb, quite frankly, where I'm like,
Sure.
wow, I should know more in this area. And then the
Mhm.
last like year or so, I've kind of been giving myself permission in those conversations to be like, this is not where I'm spending my time. And it's okay that I'm not as like up to date
Yeah.
on like world history. And instead it's shifted from feeling like less than in our conversations, or stupid or unintelligent or uninformed, to actually really like valuing his friendship, because I learn so much
Mhm.
every time I talk to him, and I really trust him. Like I really
Mm.
trust the research he does. We don't always see eye to eye on the conclusions he comes to, But in those conversations, I've literally said to him, and it made me so uncomfortable at first, but it feels better now. I've said to him, like, I just haven't done the same. Like, this is not like the area in which I like spend my time like you do. And so I don't even
Mm,
feel like I have like context to like bring to the table um much more than like what you're like teaching me, but I'm very much enjoying like what you're showing me. And at first it
mm,
felt like I could tell it was touching on the core belief that not knowing is like a problem or I'm like an
right,
idiot.
right. Mm-hmm.
uh and it was really uncomfortable, but now it's actually very comfortable. And honestly, it's like almost
Mm,
like I've set like a context with our conversations. And so it feels less like he's talking like at me almost, because that was the other thing
mm-hmm.
that I used to feel in our conversations was that he was like really like talking at me, and I would get like my defenses would start to go up a little bit, but I realized it wasn't him at
Mm-hmm.
all. It was actually my own
Mm.
beliefs around the need to
Feeling,
feel
yeah.
informed, the need to like know
Mm-hmm.
more about world events, because that's something I really wish I knew. I really wish I knew more about like history and things like that. And I'm actually like starting to do that, like read more and stuff like that. But it's just not where I spent my time. I've spent my time in the world of
Mm,
science, and there's
mm,
really like only so much time in our lives. And we're not all going to be like spending our hours like reading and the same things. And so that's like ultimately like that's the value of us as
right.
humans. Like we're diversifying our knowledge, our experience, our expertise, and that's how we're going to get shit done. Like
Yeah.
that's like become the that's the journey of that belief for me, was going from seeing
Mm,
it as something that like people were um participating maybe or spending their lives in a way that wasn't as helpful for like the collective,
mm,
to believing
mm,
that actually that's like the most important thing we can do with our lives, to acknowledging that and not feeling like I need to be know everything that
every
everybody's
all the
like every
time.
subject that's coming
Yeah.
up in conversation. And in
Mm,
fact, being in conversations where I'm kind of like out of my depth are where I'm gonna like learn a ton, and those now I can
mm,
like value those friendships like even further. So that's like a I
mm.
don't know, that was like a belief journey that kind of came to my mind.
I
Um
love how you painted I love how you painted that. I think that gives like a really clear picture of how those things can shift and change into a place where now I'm sure you're open and you witness so much more richness and
yes.
beauty, and you're probably
Yes.
open to learning a lot more than maybe
Mhm.
you were. And I think that that thing is huge, like shifting away from judgment or shame into just like having this like it's the beginner's mind, right? It's like I can
Mhm.
learn from any situation. And I mean, it's not to say, I feel like I've encountered people that do try to make you feel small, like they try to like make you feel small with their like all their knowing, which feels shitty, and I'm kind of like, what's the
Yes.
deal?
Yeah, but
but
I
but
think you
I
can
don't think
just say I
most
don't
people do it.
know, and
Yeah.
it's like pretty disarming for those people, cuz
Yeah.
I like what are they going to do with that? You just say like that's not really like where I spend my time like learning. So I don't
Yeah.
really have much to add to this.
Yeah. And
I've like
I
definitely
like
said that to people who and they're like, "Oh." Cuz I think sometimes when people are trying to like make you feel small, I actually really don't think it's usually like intentional
Yeah,
always.
probably not. I mean, I've been in situations where it has been, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Well,
agree also.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, I have too.
For
Men.
sure.
Mansplaining
There
is
is
literally like the word for this. I'm joking.
there's a
It's not
word
all.
for it.
It's a word for it.
Not
Man.
all men.
I know, not all
There
men.
is, and I think just being really inquisitive, like I love meeting people that do something, that like have a passion for something that I have like never even fucking like thought about. And it like
My
clicks me into this
favorite.
like mode where I just met somebody that makes like psychedelic portal stage designs for like electronic
What?
music. And I was
Fuck
just
yeah.
like, and I asked like a bazillion questions, and I'm like, what's the inspiration behind this? What would be your ideal, like,
Drugs.
what would be your ideal, like, psychedelics? Like, what would be your ideal, like, project to work on? And I feel like I learned so much, and now I have this appreciation for like set design, for like DJs, and like in this, it just is such a cool thing that I
Yes.
didn't know, you know? And I think it's just like letting yourself be childlike and inquisitive about things you don't
Yes.
know, and
Yes.
exploring other people's beliefs and passions and things like that is so nice,
Look,
you know?
letting yourself ask obvious questions is also like a question that you think you should know the answer to is also a really good way to push back on this. It's something I've been practicing. There was a moment where I asked a question of a tracker in South Africa um, like I just said like why wouldn't you want to like shoot a black rhino if you were in like a life or death situation? It's an endangered species. Like I know that, right? But I like
Mm,
wanted to hear his thought process on it. And someone sitting next to me
mm,
was like, ah, it's endangered, obviously. And I was like, yeah. Like tell me more like because like that he was talking about a life or death situation with him and a black rhino where he was like him and a
mm,
group of people he was with was being charged and like hiding behind the rocks and then it ended up he started going down this like thought process and what you do and blah 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 and it was like it was an obvious question like it was a question that
mm,
like yes you don't want to shoot an endangered animal dumb question on the surface but he ended up going down like so much like of what goes on in his brain as a tracker when he's
mm,
like negotiating like situations where there's like lives at risk and an endangered animal like he lives like in the bush and
mm.
it's like it just stood out to me as a moment where I was like I'm gonna ask this question that seems dumb like I like made that
Yeah.
choice um
Mm-hmm.
and I just think that I don't know you learn so much because you think that like I also will sometimes preface questions like that with I feel like I know the answer, but I don't want to make any assumptions. And I'd also love to hear you like expand on this. Boom. Insert dumb
Mm-hmm.
question.
Mm,
It's one of my favorite things about being a copywriter actually is it's like quite literally your job to like ask questions and be curious. And if you make
mm.
assumptions, you like miss things. And
You miss
that has
things,
been a
yeah.
practice that I've taken like from copywriting into my life that has made it so much more rich because you're right when you meet someone who's like so obsessed or like just in love or passionate about something that is like my favorite. I have a friend in college. I'll like one of my favorite. He was so passionate about birds, and I used to tease him because I was like, you're like 20 years old, and you're like a bird watcher. You're such an
That's
old
so
man."
cute. Yeah.
But he like going hiking with him or like being in the woods with him, kayaking, rock climbing with him, and asking him about the birds was so fucking cool. He could call
Mm.
them in. We'd literally be like hanging out behind our like dorm and he'd be like, whoa, whoa, and then an owl would arrive. And I was just like,
It's like a
you're
Disney
so
princess.
cool. Yes, he's a
It's
Disney princess.
amazing.
And it's just so fun to get curious about people's like I like their passions because you learn so much. But
Mm,
having the need to know it all definitely like can get in that way. So I think practicing asking dumb asking in quotations dumb questions, and like giving yourself permission to not know everything is like
mhm.
it just brings so much more richness into your life. I love it.
It does. And relief and
And
freedom.
relief
It's
and
like
freedom.
relief.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's so
So
good.
I had a thought. I kind of was like, I never really like looked from this perspective, and it kind of something you said triggered it, but just like the I guess it's kind of looping back a little bit to the just being okay with not knowing, and that in itself can be a thing.
Mhm.
And not feeling like the pressure to immediately replace it and make a decision from that place of like not knowing or triggery state. um Sometimes this is I guess this is a thought, like looking back at my like little 24-year-old self that was like freaking the fuck out. I didn't know what I was going to teach my daughter about the world. I
Mm.
didn't, because all I knew at that point was like this was it, this little pinhole, this is like what reality was, and that was unraveling. and I had, so it makes sense. I had this like pressure to want to replace that with something else, you know.
Oh yeah.
I needed another
Yes.
lens to look at reality through. And what ended up happening is, because I just did, I don't know, I don't know. I mean, there was a layer of like, I might be like smote by God, which was like really stressful because like that adds another layer
Jeez.
to the I don't know. And I actually know a lot of people who have experienced the that kind of old school way of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
When they're deconstructing, they struggle a lot. That's like a big thing, like struggling with being smoked by God. But like, so that was
I can't
there.
even
But
imagine.
yeah, you like walk around it's it's not so like, it's so hard. And and it's this syndrome, this like religious trauma syndrome that people are operating in, and it's like not recognized, and people don't recognize it in themselves. It's becoming more recognized, but it's such a big thing. It's such a big thing. That's like what my work is going to be around in a large way.
I
Anyway,
know, I'm so
looking
excited.
back at my little looking back at
Little
my little
foreshadowing
24-year-old
nugget.
self,
Was that a little
little
foreshadowing nugget?
nugget. I'm gonna try to help all you that are in that space. I have like but it like, looking back, what I would tell my 24-year-old self is like, I didn't replace that thing. Like, I stayed in
Mm-hmm.
the I don't know. Like, sure, I adopted values
Yes.
and certain specific beliefs, but I didn't go from one massive, all encompassing belief system to another one. I didn't,
Yes.
that space,
Yes.
that huge space on my shelf remained empty. And now, and I have like little trinkets that I put up there of these beautiful things that I'm adding
Little
to my like
seashells.
system of belief. But like,
Yeah.
but yeah, what I learned to do is
That's a
say,
good point.
ultimately, like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And actually, I feel like that's really honest, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like the big I don't knows, like, why am I here and what happens after
What?
I
I
die.
was just gonna say, what happens after I die? Yep.
It's just like, I think the most honest thing is, I don't know. And now, and we've gone through this. Like, I think it's really important for some people to be able to have a belief system that gives them a sense of like
Oh,
security and
for
safety
sure.
around those things, if that's not the point of their life to like deal with that
Grapple
or
with
figure
this.
that out. But
Wait, we need to dig into that a little bit. Real, like, go ahead
okay,
though.
that's like a whole
I'm
thing.
bookmarking
Yeah.
that. I'm bookmarking that. Keep going
Okay.
though. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Oh, yeah. I think we could just go there. I don't
Okay.
know where I was really going
Oh,
with all
sorry.
that. Let's go there.
Well, because
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me is once I started doing this, I was actually really angry. Because that's where I that's my default
Fairy
emotion.
season, bitches.
I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. I'm mad. So, but that's really important, I think, because and I think this was an important phase to go through, but once I was like, while I was deconstructing this, I was mad primarily at my parents
Mhm.
for um instilling beliefs in me that I didn't agree with. But like, I wasn't mad at them for doing it. Maybe a little bit. I'm way out of that though, because I think it's just like what we do. Like, it's gonna
Mhm.
happen. But more so, I would be mad at other people, not my parents, anyone who I just like thought that they like were less than if they ultimately still chose a belief that I had discarded. Because I would be like, "Pff, I can't believe you
Yeah.
chose that belief." And then I came to a
Mhm.
place where I was like, well, that's not fair or right, or allowing people like the freedom of choice. And I'm kind of at the place now, and it's like less self-righteous than it used to be, where I'm like, I just like, all I really, my biggest hope for people is that they at least like choose, that they at least like kind of like,
Mhm.
even if they end up back where they started and they're like, you know, or they choose even, you know, some religion, or they choose some belief system that I don't agree with. I just like hope that everybody like gets a chance to choose, really.
Mhm.
Um
Mhm.
because I think that for some people, like, some belief systems are actually really helpful, give them a sense of comfort and peace and security, and that's important. Like, it's
Mhm.
important to feel like
It's
safe
so
moving about the
important.
world. And if
Yeah.
your belief system allows you to do that without harming others. Fucking big
I mean,
important
that's a
part.
big
And
fucking
without
caveat,
imposing it on
but
other
yeah.
people. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you're imposing it on other people, which is why like I had to be like, oh, you gotta like you're being a little self-righteous here and imposing your belief systems on other people. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the problematic part. But choosing a belief that is not my belief is not something I have a problem with anymore. I can be like, oof, I don't
Mm,
agree, but I don't know. My wish is that more people just choose, really, ultimately.
yeah. Like that you kind of painted this like that journey that you went on is like largely what I'm hoping to be able to facilitate for people who are navigating religious trauma is getting to be able to get really clear on the anger, on the pain, on the hurt, how that's showing up and continuing to show up and continuing to control your life essentially.
Mhm.
Because I see that a lot. Like you're in the church and then you're out of the church or you're experimenting with other things, but your anger about what happened and the pain about what happened is still like controlling your life just as much as it was when you were in the church, right? And so like
Mhm.
that, but
Mhm.
that's really hard. It's like so confusing to navigate through. Oh my god, like I mean I was there for years just like wandering around trying to figure out how to get the fuck to get out of here. And like for me coming to that decision of like seeing the value in the good parts, right?
Mhm.
Like seeing the value in like the good parts of the things and of the church or whatever
Yeah.
the system is was like a really it was really important for me to come to that place of compassion and also get to stand in my self-worth and differentiate between but these things I believe are harmful, you know, like
Mhm.
these things when you tell a child that they're going to hell, like I believe that that is harmful. That was really harmful for me and I'm never going to agree with that. There might
Right.
be people that adhere to that belief system and it helps them stay in alignment because they're afraid of these consequences and that might be what they do. For me, living like a realized like liberated free
Mhm.
life it does not include like that fear-based belief system but like it's just the it serves a purpose for some people
Mhm.
and it really truly does and it's like I wish the same thing. I wish people would consciously like be able to choose their beliefs but I know that that's not going to be the case for a
Mhm.
lot of people and i
Maybe
also
that's
i
the
also
point.
think that
Their
that
point
might
on
not be
this
the
earth
point.
this time.
It
Yeah.
just might not be
Yeah.
the point for them. The
It's not
point
what they're
might for them
doing
might
with
be
their life.
family or it might be career.
Yes.
It's just a different thing. And I think just letting that go,
Yes.
letting everybody else, all of that go and just being responsible for you and not having to let that transform into judgment and anger, but being at peace with like yourself. Because I think it's like it takes a minute to feel confident there or to feel like more grounded in that like when you shift your beliefs like that it takes a minute and those phases of like anger and judgment and like almost like wanting other people to change their beliefs like I went through all of that like I know how that all like I'm like how could
Right.
you possibly adhere to this thing it's
Yes.
ridiculous or
Yes.
whatever like I
Yes.
went
But
through all of those things
that's a
but you come
stuck place when people,
that's
and
a
I see
stuck
it
place.
happening with like so many people, especially with like, I don't even want to say it. With everything related to like what's gone on in the last 2 years, we'll keep it real vague. Everybody knows what
Hmm.
I'm talking about. With like politics and stuff like that. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
when you are so judgmental and are not open to the fact that like life is more nuanced, there are more like there's more gray area than there is black and white. And when you are judgment and harsh and like hating on people for their beliefs, when we are seriously, literally in a moment, in a period of time where we're still figuring it out and data is changing and information is changing, I'm just like, you're actually hurting yourself. Like I've really come to believe that you're not like you're not making it like a collective like betterment situation. That was not the best way of saying that, but you're actually like more often like hurting yourself, hurting your own belief system because you're coming at it with such a strong sense of judgment when and nobody listens to that. Nobody listens to somebody who is like like just like in a self-righteous like
Shoving
I know
stuff down
better
their throat.
place.
Yeah.
This that's it's just not where change happens. And so I actually,
Mm-hmm.
the people I know, even when I agree with them, but when they come at it in like an attacking, like fuck those other people, they're doing it wrong mindset, I'm like, you're actually hurting your own cause and you're hurting yourself and you're causing more drama for yourself. It's just like, not collectively like
Mm.
helping anything. And it's so hard to
Yeah, I
watch,
agree.
especially when it's actually people I agree with. I'm like, I agree with you, but I
Like,
just feel like the way you're going about this is like
but
causing
not that
you harm.
way.
Yeah, well, because I don't even think that like when you have such strong judgments of people who are doing it like wrong, you're not hurting them. Not really. I really think that more than anything, you're hurting yourself. And that's why I
Mm.
chose to move beyond that. Because I was like, staying in this place, first of all, the thing is I was going to say it doesn't feel good, but actually, because I like lived so much of my life in like fully in high beta, it actually kind of did feel good. And I live in like my go-to thing is like fight. So I can't say it like
Mm.
fully didn't feel good to be in that self-righteous, judgmental like place, because there was a part of me that felt familiar and felt comfortable. But as I
Mm.
wanted to
Mm.
like have a more like ease in my life and a sense of calm and like show up more fully and be better and enjoy my days and be happier and like more loving, I realized that actually isn't helping anything. They're not Nobody else is changing their mind when I'm in that place. And
Mm.
also it's ultimately truly I truly believe just harming me more than anything. And that is
Yeah.
I don't know why I chose to like move past that. But I do, again, we've talked about many times before. I do think it's an important phase to go through. It's just about
Yeah.
whether or not you get stuck there. I don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think you do get to a point where you're like, you're hitting up against this wall, like with this force and anger and judgment, and you're realizing that nothing, it doesn't change anything. Like I do think you
Mhm.
kind of get to a point where you realize, like, I'm the only one suffering here in this thing. Like what am I trying to accomplish? Maybe that's the question to ask. Is like, what is that? I really think that judgment and anger is just a protective mechanism that is
Totally.
trying to make you feel a little bit more secure and more powerful. And
Yes.
when you realize you don't need to have that to feel secure in whatever your belief is, and you can let
Mhm.
that go, then you get to walk in compassion
I
for
love that.
people and their
And I love
yeah.
that you said it makes you feel powerful, because I think that's actually why it did feel good. Because, like, I started to say it doesn't even feel good, but it actually does when you don't know anything better. Like, when
Yeah.
you like that, you can get, I think one of the reasons people get stuck there is because it does feel powerful. You feel powerful when you're
Yeah.
judging others. Um,
Mm,
but when you get to the other side of that, which is compassion, in my opinion, or like a more ability to see a more nuances in the world and like richness,
mm,
that actually feels much more powerful. But if you don't have that
mm,
experience, then I mean, I think that's why I was stuck in that angry place for so long, because it feels powerful, you feel safe, you feel protected, you feel on guard, and
mm,
prepared, but it's also
mm.
exhausting, and you can feel much more
Yeah.
powerful like in a calmer state of mind. And it took me,
It's so much more empowering when you're
oh, for
like,
sure.
you're encountering a situation that maybe might have like triggered you in the past, and to
Yes.
be in a situation like that and be like, I actually don't have to engage with this or get worked up in this, or I don't, or you're talking to somebody and you're like, I don't feel like this is a conversation in which you're really wanting to like hear what I have to say, and so, we don't really
Mhm.
have to, like, and that feels so much more powerful to just be like, actually, like, I don't, we don't have to
Yeah,
do it,
yeah, we're good.
and being able to do that from a place of compassion and seeing the other person like, yeah, yeah, it feels
Totally.
really good, it feels really good to be angry and judgy, like, and I
It does.
think it's like,
Yes.
it is this whole like equilibrium thing. I think it's necessary, actually. Like, I when I was going through my whole deconstruction, I was really averse to being angry because that was bad.
Mhm.
And I actually had to effort to be angry. And you've seen me have to like effort to be angry
I
at
know, I
things.
get so proud of you when you're angry. I've
Yeah.
seen her angry in, like, the entire time I've known you, like, 10 times. Maybe not even. I don't
Oh,
know. But
Yeah,
every
I
time
don't
you're
get angry
angry,
very
I,
often.
kn- I it's actually funny because when you get angry, I have to like fight back the urge to like giggle because I get so excited.
Yeah.
But I'm like, she's so cute. Look at her getting angry.
Yeah. It's like it feels like I'm gonna die. But
I know you hate
but
it. I
it's so
love
weird.
it.
Like I would so much rather have an existential crisis. But I think I'm getting a lot more
No.
comfortable with anger.
Yeah,
I'm
you
getting
are.
more comfortable. I guess like what I'm saying is I'm seeing its value, and I'm
Yes.
seeing that it is a necessary stage to reintroduce equilibrium and balance into your life. Because when you have been like when you've gone through crisis and you've been really disoriented and or you're going through a
Hmm.
lot of pain, I
Yes.
think that like that angry phase is it's like I think it's a really important phase of equilibrium. Now, maybe we evolve as humans and we like get to opt out of that at some point, but I actually think it's like a really important part
I'm like,
with the
don't.
whole
I don't
thing,
want to. A
with the
world
whole
without anger
thing.
sounds sad to me. Like, I don't want that.
I guess I mean
I'm joking. I'm
not
just being like,
anger,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
anger in its like fullest sense, but like anger as in like I need to take my power back.
Yeah.
But like and I feel like I'm just I just have a whole different perspective on it now, and I value it. And I
Yes.
feel like I can
Totally. Me
see, I
too.
witness people when they're in that space, and I'm able to say like it makes sense, like what's
Yeah.
happening makes sense and is important. And
Yeah.
you're not going to always be here, you
Right.
know, but like but it is also important I think to remember in that phase, it's important for me to remember that this isn't the whole picture. Because when you are angry,
Your
I feel
vision
like
gets
you
so
have
narrow.
you get really
And
narrow.
not
You
only
really
that,
do.
but you pull up, and this is just another like natural thing that the brain does. You actually pull up other examples that validate your experience that you're having currently. So, I mean, we all know what
To
that feels like when
reinforce.
you're,
Yes.
yeah, to
Yes.
reinforce. So when you're angry, it's like literally like all the other angry memories are right on the surface and super easy to access. Um, to access. And so, yeah, it's like you just got to know
Yeah.
that like that's what the tendency is. Cuz when I'm sad and me and Ben are like, having a hard time, I'm like, "You always do this. I'm always feeling,"
Right.
and he's just like, "Always? Really?" And I'm like, "No."
Hmm.
But it
Yeah.
feels like it's true in that point in time. For
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
There it does seem to be a correlation maybe a little bit here that I'm kind of seeing between like adjusting a belief system, especially if it's a big one, and
Going
going
through
through a
anger.
phase of unknown, going through
Uh-huh.
an unknown phase, maybe going through a phase of anger and judgment,
Mhm.
and ultimately getting to a place of equilibrium and
Mhm.
feeling more grounded in yourself. And it doesn't actually really matter what anybody else is doing, but you getting to a place where you're like, this is good for me, you
Mhm.
know. And it's almost like it's this kind of journey. I don't think that that is the path that every single like adjusting a belief goes through,
Right.
but I think some of the big ones, especially when they're belief systems that were handed to you, for sure, like
Mhm.
inherited belief systems, because there is differentiating you have to do between like from your parents, your community,
Yes, and
your
that's
family,
so
whatever.
painful. It's so painful.
That is
Um,
painful.
because it like I don't know. One thing I wanted to say though, because all of this again, and we've touched on this before in previous episodes, but an important thing for me was like to want to come. I had to figure out how to want to come out of that angry judgmental phase because again, I feel like I was raised in high beta, which is like a very activated, like fight or flight almost like sense of being, and it's so
Mm,
it feels very good to me to be there.
mm,
And I had to like there was like a I think it was like a meme or something that has like always stuck with me, and I can't quite remember what it said, but it was basically like not not responding triggered, or not like um joining someone when they're in like a triggered state, or not responding is a flex. And I was like,
mm,
because I think what the value in being like high beta can sometimes be angry, but high beta is not always angry, is that you feel safe. and you feel in control
Mm.
and you feel powerful. And so for me, it was a practice of like actually wanting calmness in my life, wanting more
Yeah.
ease, wanting more peace. Like I had to come to like enjoy that feeling. And that like was a practice for
Mm.
me that took time because
Mm.
initially it was actually very uncomfortable for me to like not respond, not feel like I needed to like say my piece or be the last person to say something. Becoming more comfortable. This is something I'm still all of this is stuff I'm still practicing, but this one is one I'm still practicing a lot, is the not
Mm.
needing to feel understood. And
Mm.
also like so not needing to feel understood in a particular situation and like staying like calm because I know it's like better for me and I can make better decisions. Like I sometimes have to remind myself that like that's a flex because that's like the
Mm.
thing that makes me want it, if that makes sense. Because I
Mm.
don't think
Mhm.
left to my own devices, without all these tools and new ways of like seeing the world and navigating the world, I don't think that I like really wanted uh ease initially. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
just kind
you
of wanted
had
to
to
like
see
touch
it
on
as a
that because I
strength.
think
I think
yes, that's
yeah.
what it is. Thank you.
You had to you had to see it as a strength and not as something that is like you don't have
A hot
balls, you're not sticking up for yourself, you're right.
yes.
It had to be like
Mhm.
the ease, the not needing to be understood, not needing to
Yes.
fight is such a deep expression of strength. And it's
Yes.
true. It is
It's actually like
absolutely
a
true
deeper
because
form of strength than what I was
I
operating
think
in.
because
And that
the other thing I think is actually like an insecurity and an ungroundedness. Like when you're
mhm.
so, I mean, for me, for
Yes.
sure, like, like it's like like I've experienced anger or judgment because it's just a deep insecurity in me, like that I was like not
Mhm.
really wanting to
Mhm.
look at, and that like so there's all those like nuanced layers for sure.
Yeah. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
When you see it in other people, like I don't think I've seen my dad like triggered like ever. Maybe like twice. I remember actually as like an obnoxious teenager like trying to trigger him because I was just like, this man
Hmm.
is not real. Like,
Hmm.
cause he just is so calm. And
Hmm.
so, but it, and like he to me is like the ultimate flex of somebody who is so deeply like confident in who he is because he's so like not rattled by things.
Yeah.
And for me,
Like what
he's
a deep
such an embodiment of like what somebody who is like secure looks like. Because when you talk to someone and they start
yeah.
like flailing in front of you, like that doesn't like communicate security
Mm.
like in themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that like that touches on such a beautiful piece that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Like, how am I respecting my state of well-being? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is how I'm engaging, is that honoring my like deserving and I think like inherent state of well-being. I think that's like how we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
um, but like for me it's almost like the opposite. Like I can tend to let myself be bulldozed, and so I've been kind of practicing being like,
Yeah, you
this
have.
isn't in alignment, like
I'm doing a dance.
like the yeah, and actually like speaking up a little bit more, so it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like almost the other side of the coin of like being like, this isn't accurate and this isn't alignment and I'm creating a boundary here, and
Yeah.
like that's kind of been the practice that
Yeah.
I've been doing for
You
sure.
can we
Yeah.
just talk? We won't go into details, but you just wrote this email recently that was like super assertive, and you like were like, Sarah, can you read this? And I read it, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, get him. And it wasn't even like it was like 10% of the assertiveness I probably would have brought into an email like that. It was very like you're so good at like
Yeah.
seeing nuances and like leaving space for their humanness and blah blah blah. Like you're just like and so I was just reading it like because you don't I know it's something you're practicing and so it was
Hmm.
very exciting for the Aries in me to I kind of actually just cringed when I referred to myself as an Aries but but
No,
it
I
was
love
I was
it.
like I was trying that on
You're doing it.
um but yeah like I see you practicing it and I'm very proud of you I have to say because I think it's good I think it's
Thanks.
being
Mhm.
assertive, I mean, we've just been so taught, especially as women, like that being assertive is wrong and bad and I don't know, but men have like no problem
Bossy.
being
Oh
assertive and it
no,
just
it's yeah. Like it's kind of this like line to balance or this like place, yeah, this place of balance where you are caring for your well-being and you're grounded in your own strength and you're not bulldozing other people
yep.
and you're not being bulldozed,
Yes.
right? But you're like you're maintaining boundaries, internal, external boundaries, and you are like in a state of like caring for, yeah, and honoring your place, like yourself and your state of well-being. And so like depending on, and we embody those two sides of the coin so well, but like there are practices there, and I'm hoping to get to the place where, you know, because that was like an email that I like spent like time writing, and eventually I'm going to get to like in real time be able to do that a little bit better,
Mhm.
which I'm looking forward to, and like holding boundaries and things like that. But it would be good for us to talk about boundaries, I think, at some point in time, because that was like not at all part of my lexicon whatsoever at all as a child, or understanding what that looks like.
Yeah,
Like,
I could talk about
how
it.
deep
I
that
kind of feel
into.
like I'm just going to call this out because it's like not that I don't want to talk about it, but it's funny because in the personal development world, there are some topics that I'm like, I'm just like over. And that feels like one of them. I
Mm.
know it's important, but I
That's
just
like
feel like it's
that's
an
been like beaten
over.
down.
Yeah, but I think I'm sure we have a like spin on it that might be a little different. And we haven't like given it any thought, but it is one of those things where I'm just like, I don't know. There's so many
I
things
agree.
that
You know
feel,
what? I feel like I agree with that, because people are just like, "Oh, you need boundaries." Like,
yeah,
and this word is thrown out there, but I'm like, how the fuck do you do that when you have never had a boundary in your life? Like,
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
please, somebody
No,
like
it's
show
important.
show me what that looks like.
It's important. It's just like the
You
word
know,
itself. I'm like,
has been beaten down a little
a little
bit. I mean,
bit.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
I
But
think
I'm
that
still
there
down to
is
talk about it.
still,
Just that was what came to mind as I was like,
yeah,
ugh, boundaries.
yeah.
I don't know. Just I feel like every fucking therapy I've ever been to from the time for like a decade was like, you need to set boundaries. You need to set boundaries. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I
I know.
actually
I
know
guess
it'd
like
be
my
more
whole thing is like,
interesting to
what does
me.
that mean? Yeah.
We
Hmm.
maybe we do this. What I really what's more interesting to me is setting internal boundaries. And we've talked a lot about
I
that in
mean, I
our
think it's like,
personal conversations because I feel like that's like a layer that's not as focused on. We can also talk about like setting like external boundaries, but internal boundaries have helped me almost more, I think, than setting external
I,
boundaries.
because to internal boundaries are like keeping the promises you make to yourself. Like it, and
Hmm.
that is like really fucking important, like to build
Hmm.
self-trust. Like, and honestly,
And to
when I think
say,
of boundaries, it's mostly that, and it's not as much like I'm telling,
yeah,
like it actually is, I think
yes,
it's mostly for me it's internal
I
and
agree.
energetic,
Hmm.
and it's my intentions in a space. But it's like it's not really like telling somebody like you're not allowed to talk to me that
Like
way, like
setting a
it doesn't
boundary. Yeah, yeah.
that's not what it,
No, I'm
yeah,
down.
which I think that would be fun to dig in too, because that for me when I say boundaries, I guess that's like mostly what I think
Yeah,
about is
that is.
that version of
I
it.
And when we talk about boundaries, it's usually that form of it, but I don't know that that's the conversation I hear happening in the
That most
world
people are
mostly.
having. I think,
I
yeah,
don't think
yeah,
so. I don't know, at
totally.
least in therapy,
Yeah.
most boundary conversations are not about internal boundaries. They're much more about setting boundaries with other people. Anyway, yes, I love it. Let's
Mhm.
do it.
Okay.
Is that our next
All right.
topic? I love how we like
I guess so.
wrap up with like what we're going to talk about next.
With our
The
next,
next,
we have been doing this like lately, which is nice.
yeah. Well, because we see a
Yeah.
frontier and we're like, that's another
That's
episode.
where we're going next.
Ah, well,
uh,
I just adore you and I love these. It's so nice to have set aside time to like just really dig into things
mm.
and explore them because I don't know, that's where I gain the most insight is through exploration, not through necessarily setting any definitive belief. So, I like it.
Oh yeah. And the thing is like you can always take stuff off the shelf if it
Yes.
doesn't work for
And
you
I
anymore.
love this.
You're
This is like
nobody's
our
super
thing.
gluing anything on the shelf.
Is this an affirming apparel like shirt?
Oh, it should be
Like a shelf, like a
yeah.
cute shelf of
Oh,
all
with
the
like
little
little
beliefs, like little
beliefs on
trinkets.
the oh, yeah, that would be so
Yeah.
cute. It could be all like kawaii and like cute little like
Yes. Yes.
things. Okay, I can work on that.
A belief shelf.
Done.
Well, until
Yeah.
next time.
Okay. Yes. I love
Bye.
you.